Welcome to the 60 Plus Best Life podcast. We know that being in your 60s doesn't mean being over the hill anymore, and that, in fact, for many of us, the 60s feel more like a time of bright new beginnings, but with the added benefit of decades of wisdom and perspective. We also know that being in this time of life poses many questions and anxieties. We're happy to bring you conversations with those who have taken actions to create or enhance their lives to experience as much vitality, accomplishment, and purpose as possible by embracing change and the challenges in front of them. You'll also learn from health and wellness professionals, creators, and visionaries who are making life at 60 plus the best time of life. Join me, Daisy Swan, and Kimberly Fowler as we explore this life stage rich with possibility, depth, and new beginnings. By liking, subscribing, and forwarding this podcast, you'll be increasing the awareness that indeed the 60s and beyond hold so much more opportunity for enhanced health, personal growth, income, adventure, and satisfaction as well. Let's change those outdated perceptions that being in your 60s spells old age for good. Well, I'm so happy to have Darlene Fountaine here with me this morning. Darlene and I are good friends and colleagues too. And I will say that our boys, although I can't say boys anymore, probably, our sons have referred to themselves as brothers from other mothers.
Exactly.
Sharing love of aircraft and cars, and transportation modality, anything that can go fast.
Yes, speed. They have a need for speed.
Exactly. So Darlene and I know each other from our kids' education, really, from elementary school and onwards. And so I'm delighted to share a little bit about her. Darlene is now an executive life coach with more than 20 years of experience working with individuals and organizations. And she is all about transformation, which is near and dear to my heart as well. She works in consulting, nonprofits. She was an independent school administrator, and she is a board member, actually a chairperson.
A board chair.
Chair. So that's a big deal of the school that our sons went to for high school.
Yes.
So I'm so happy that you're there. She's a recognized advocate and change agent in the diversity and inclusion arena, and has worked with thousands of people to revolutionize agendas. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that as well. So let's see. Let me just go to education. Darlene has a BA in psychology from University of Michigan and an MBA from the University of Southern California. And right now, I know you're in Michigan on vacation.
Yes, I am.
So, and she's married and lives in LA. And so in terms of certifications, Darlene is ICF professional certified as a coach, and she's also certified in teams and relationships, diversity and inclusion, women's entrepreneurship, and business sustainability. So I'm
a lifelong learner.
You and me both.
Yes.
Yeah. So anybody who gets to work with her is fortunate because she brings so much experience. And one of the reasons I thought of you as somebody who would be great to have on the 60 plus best life podcast. I know you're newer to your 60s than some of us. But, having seen you make a few transitions in your career, I thought you would be able to share perspective about what that was like for you going through that and, kind of landing in a place that feels pretty dang good now.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So can you just talk a little bit about how you went from MBA to making some of the changes that you made earlier in your career? Just curious about that value shift.
Right. So I guess, so starting there, I'll talk a little bit about working, like after my MBA, I worked in marketing for a bit, and but then I got married, and then I had a child, and I wanted to have the ability to spend time with my child as opposed to having, I mean, we make different choices, so we make the choices that we are allowed to make. Right. And so, you can't always decide to stay home with your child, but that was something that I really wanted to do and I was able to do. So that's kind of how I moved out of that corporate world. And what I wanted was flexibility. And so I wanted to figure out, like, what can I do where I can use all of my skills, but have flexibility at the same time. And so at that time, I worked in real estate. Did you know that I worked in real estate?
I don't know if I did.
I don't know if you knew that, but I worked in real estate, and that was the job that allowed me to have some money to pay tuition when it was time for my son to go to school. So it gave me tuition money, it gave us vacation money, and it helped, with my husband, so he didn't pressure me to like really go back to a full-time job.
So it was working for you. Real estate was working.
It was working for me. But then the other thing that it did was it gave me the opportunity to volunteer in schools. And so what I did, so I worked, it gave me a market for people. So it gave me a market for clients, but it also gave me the opportunity to volunteer in schools. And I found myself volunteering in his preschool. I just went in and used all those MBA skills to reorganize the office and do all of those things that they needed there. Yeah. And then when he went on to elementary school, I had time to volunteer because I had lots of flexibility. And that was when I've always had like this passion for kids and for education. But I spent so much time volunteering in an educational environment that I really said, if I'm spending all this time in schools, I should probably work in a school. And because I love that environment so much more than I did real estate.
Yeah.
And so I decided at that time, I chaired the Parent Association, which is something before, especially kind of like that MBA type, we're like, oh, I would never be on the PTA. I would never be PTA president. No way. Yeah, never say never, because I chaired the Parent Association at his school. And that was just like a look inside. And it was a 2-year commitment. And it was basically like I worked at a school. And so that was when I decided to apply for a job in a school after that.
I want to say, it's no mean feat being a president of a parent.
Oh,
I mean, talk about...
That is a full-time job, and talk about transferable skills.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
Getting along with the people who are passionate about their education for their kids, and opinionated and
managing volunteers.
Whew, that's hard. And a tight budget usually.
Right. Yes. All of that.
Right.
All of that. Yes. So,
and I just want to call this out because, I do work with people who are women generally who are going from having been out of the workforce, perhaps in a similar situation. You're not in this situation happily. You're married and life is copacetic that way. But, for women who have been out of the workforce and maybe doing a lot of this volunteerism, they think, I've heard them say, I don't have any skills, or I haven't been in the workforce.
Right.
What do I bring? So thank you for talking about this.
Yes, exactly. And I have a friend who does not have children, and she when I was looking for a job, this was later after, before, during this career shift, because I've shifted careers a couple of times, but I had a friend and she said, "Oh, take that off of your resume. Take that volunteer stuff off of your resume." And I was like, no way, no way. So when people hear that, someone will say, the people who review resumes or do a lot of resume work often will tell you not to put that school volunteer work on your resume. But do not listen to those people, because they don't understand the amount of work that you do as a volunteer in schools or anywhere, any of your volunteer work. Those are transferable skills. You're doing the things that people do and they get paid for.
Absolutely.
So just because you didn't get paid for it doesn't mean you weren't working.
Right. No, gosh, that's something I want people to maximize when they're putting their resumes together, when they're making a re-careering kind of transition like that. So, okay, so go ahead. So you got this look into school operations.
Yes. And so I spent a lot of my time in admissions and doing admission tours and things like that. And so then when I decided to look for a job, I had lots of skills in admissions. Yeah. And so I went and I applied for a job at a school, and I purposely chose the school that my son didn't attend, as opposed to trying to find a job there, because it just made things simpler for me. Sure. To have him in a separate place. Yeah. So I got a job. They were happy. More than they looked at my resume, they felt like I was a blessing that fell from the sky. They were like, "Wow, where did you come from? Thank you." So it was cool. It was like the perfect match immediately. I worked, so I got a job at a school, developmental kindergarten through 8th grade school. I worked the first year as the executive assistant to the head of school. And on that note, I will say, put your ego aside. And, because some people, they're like, you have an MBA and you're the executive assistant. Right. The executive assistant's no more than anyone in the building, for the record. But
I'm going to call that now the new chief of staff. There are a lot of chief of staff roles out there now.
Yes, exactly. Right? And so, yes, exactly. So I took that position, and what I didn't know at the time was that head was planning to leave, and she hired me so that I could kind of manage her transition. And so I managed the search for the next head of school. So I was my first year there, I was executive assistant. And then my second year, I joined the admission team as the director of marketing. And then my third through 11th year, I was there for 11 years. I was director of admission.
That's a pretty good progression, and fast.
Yes. Yeah. But I was qualified, and yeah. I had my life experience. I had my education, as well as all of that experience as a volunteer.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So, and during that time, the school really expanded as well.
yes, it did. Yes, I think we had 241 students when I started, and we had 546 students when I left. So, and we started a new division. We started a preschool division. So yes, lots of growth, lots of gray hairs. Ha ha ha. But it was a lot of work, and so absolutely, I did love that job. But my personal philosophy, which is kind of what helped me leave real estate as well, is, I believe in doing something until it stops working, and really paying attention to, is this still working for me? What about this? And so I enjoyed my time in admissions, but I was feeling like I wanted more, and I needed something else and some kind of change. And I really kind of listened to myself and paid attention to that. But I didn't know what. I didn't know what my next thing was going to be. And it was impossible to figure it out in a busy environment. And so, because, I was director of admission, which made me a part of the senior leadership team. And then I had, because I just love to volunteer. So I was on another board, and I also chaired the admission directors consortium. So I had a lot of other things going on. I will say, just an aside, it's always good to do things outside of your normal job and volunteer for other positions, like in your company or in your, like I was an admission director, so I volunteered as a part of that organization, because it just gives you
so much more of a network and things you're learning about.
Yeah. And then it helps, like, if you're getting bored with what you're doing, and it helps you have the ability to see outside of your day-to-day job.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I recall conversations when you were mulling what's next, and doing a lot of what I would call informational interviews, right? To figure out what people do and what sounded interesting, which is something I always have clients do as a career coach, right? Get out there and work your network. And you have such a fantastic network from all of this work and volunteer.
Exactly. And so what I did after, so I decided to take time off so that I would have time. I will say, one of the hardest parts in admissions was lack of flexibility. I just had no flexibility. There were, that in that job, that there are 5 months of the year that you have to be there. Yeah. And my husband traveled for work, and he was traveling the world, and I was stuck at work. And so I knew that I wanted flexibility. I really needed flexibility after doing that for so many years. Yeah. And so I took time off so that I could figure out what was next for me. And luckily, I had his support in doing that.
When you say you took time off, was that you left the job, or did you take vacation, or did you get a leave? What do you mean?
I left the job.
Okay.
I left the job because I knew that I was done with that job, but I didn't know what my next job was going to be. And so I followed the program. It's like, so if you follow the program, it works. The program is the program is all of the things that, I read the books. I read the books about career change. I talked to all of my friends and all of my networks. So, Daisy, you were one of those people I came to. And as I was trying to figure out what was next for me, I did informational interviews. I talked to mentors. I talked to people like, okay, so how do you see me? Because that really helps with self-awareness to see how you're viewed by other people. And, but I did have, I had this one mentor that I talked to, and she asked me if I'd ever considered coaching. And I hadn't really considered coaching so much. So many people, when they leave admissions, they go and they become educational consultants. But I didn't want that because you're still doing admissions because you need to know everything about what's going on, and so you're still a lot of it is like the admission jobs. So I knew I wanted something different, but I really wasn't sure what. And so I went to her because I knew that they hired consultants for. She was a part of the National Association of Independent Schools. Right. And I knew that they hired consultants. And so I was like, oh, I have all this school experience. I could be a consultant. So let me just call her and see what she thinks. And it was one of the best conversations because she told me like how she sees me. She said, I was talking about consulting, and I was talking about work in diversity and inclusion. And so she kind of took a look at my resume, and she said, well, she recommended some certificate programs, and she actually recommended that I take get a coaching certification. And she said, even if you don't decide to become a coach, those are skills that you can use in any job.
Yeah.
And so then I
how many years ago was that?
That was in that. So I stopped working in 2018.
Okay.
And I started my coaching certification program in something like September of 2019. And I got off
earlier than that. I thought for sure it was before that. Okay.
No, because I got all certified for coaching and all of that right in time for the pandemic.
Right.
So
yeah.
So I think for a lot of coaches, the pandemic was a really great time for them because people needed coaches and all of that.
Yeah.
But I had my nice little marketing plan, and I was going to go to school events. Oh, by the way, I stopped working at the school, but I joined the board. So I'm still I'm still working.
Yeah.
I went from working for a paycheck to still working and not getting a paycheck. But it also allowed me to keep those relationships because again, you don't have to wait until you reach the point where you really are just miserable with your job to leave. I left when things were still good, but they weren't really good for me and for my health and all of that. I really needed to calm down and do something where I could have some good self-care.
And
so that was time.
I'm so happy that we're having this conversation. You're like a perfect case study of what to do, which is why you're
yes.
Because I work with people who are on their last legs, they're just wiped. And, if people come into this, what I call sort of an intentionality to get change, and that's what it is. It's like a real step into, I intentionally want to figure out what's right for me. That makes all the difference to do that when you still have a little juice in the, gas in the tank.
Right, right. And when I left, it was kind of framed as a retirement. And it's funny because those weren't my words.
Mm,
And I was like, I'm not retiring. No way. I'm not old enough to retire.
okay.
But it was a good idea to frame it that way because people felt like, why are you leaving me? How could you leave? You can't leave me. And then I said, oh, I'm retiring. And they say, oh, you deserve it. So it was just, it made it really easier to transition out by framing it that way. But I knew I wasn't retiring. I knew I was going to work, but I truly did not know what my next job was going to be. But
Right.
I did, but some things but I figured out what I wanted because like I said, I followed the program. What are your values? What do you
Well,
like? What don't
and
you like?
and I want to highlight that, that's the values piece is such an
It's
important
huge.
part of this process. And, I've written down here and circled, flexibility. Obviously, I can't tell you how many clients I work with, and flexibility is like number one on their list. And it certainly was for me when I started my coaching business when Brett was, 7, I think.
Right.
And that's what it was actually before that. But I didn't have a website until a little bit later. But yeah, to be able, and that's why a lot of women go into having their own business is to have that
Yes.
flexibility. Doesn't mean that you're not working a lot, but you have the freedom or the flexibility to make your hours work
To work on your own terms. I knew that I wanted to have a job where I can work from anywhere in the world because my husband was literally traveling all around the world.
Yeah.
And even if it's in the middle of the night, I could still work,
Right.
in different time zones. So
Exactly. Yeah. And you had set this up pretty well. I mean, that I think it's okay to say you weren't 60 yet, but you were stepping
right.
along in that direction.
Yes, exactly.
So
Exactly.
so now it's working pretty well. The pandemic in some ways did work out for you with your coaching.
And I will say that you can't plan. You can plan, you can make a plan, you can make an outline. Your plan needs to be kind of an outline, and there needs to be flexibility, and you really have to adjust your mindset to, this is what I think I want to do, but this is also real life. And so just
Right.
because you plan, I had the perfect little marketing plan. You do that as a part of your coaching program. You
Right.
have to write your marketing plan. Where are you going to find clients? What are you going to do? And I was going to find clients at all of those school meetings that I still went to. And you make some comments during the meeting, and then people come and talk to you afterwards. And then you say, oh, well, I'm a coach.
That
So
was the plan. Yeah.
that was the plan. But when no one knows you're a coach yet because you've just become a coach, and then all of the meetings are on Zoom, and so there's no those conversations afterwards, all of the conversations that you would have, because my word of mouth was going to be my main way to advertise because of all the relationships that I have, and
Yeah.
being the different meetings that I went to and all of that. But then all of those meetings moved to Zoom. And so the before and after meeting conversations, those did not exist. And so that's when I had to say, okay, all right, yes, this is not ideal, but what else can I do? What's my next option? How do I continue to move forward and not just feel sorry for myself like so
Yeah.
many people kind of did in the pandemic? This didn't work for me, but it's like, okay, all right, this is the deal. How do I shift? And so my shift was doing contract work. and working for someone else so that I could learn the business.
Yeah.
And
Get those experiences.
yes. And so I had this one contract job with a company that I ended up working for them and doing kind of their operations as opposed to coaching with them.
Right.
Just because that was a need that was there, that was easy for me to fill. And that's kind of those kind of things that I do. And so I just came in and kind of organized things and helped them with their pricing and the website and all of those types of things. But what it did for me is that it showed me what a coaching business, they were about 3 years old. And so it showed me like where a business could be in 3 years. They were all of their marketing and social media and all of that stuff was starting to work for them.
Yeah.
But it showed me what I wanted for my business and what I didn't want. And so that was really good.
Yeah.
And so I worked for them for 7 months ish. But until, okay, this is the other thing. When you do something, you have to like think about, okay, it needs to be win-win. So it started out win-win, and then it ended up being more to their advantage than to mine. And so then that's another thing. It was time for me to move on. And so
I love that. I mean, that's, it's interesting working with so many different types of people. And I know you know this because you're doing this all the time now. One of the big shifts that I see with clients is to help them to see that they can decide what they want.
Yes.
And look for that or make it. Like when you see something's not working for you anymore, you can say, this doesn't work for me. I want to find something else. But it's not like you have to passively wait for it to show up. You can go out and figure out what it is you're looking for in very real terms, which is quite empowering.
Exactly. And like I said earlier, my philosophy is I will do something, but when it stops working, I have to really pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And some people have a hard time putting themselves first. And but it's really important to put yourself first because it's like, oh well, after I leave, they're not going to have this or this, but life goes on for everyone. And after they will figure it out, and you have to do what works best for you.
Yeah.
And that really is the bottom line, because oftentimes other people don't do what works best for you. And so you have to do that for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I think you've been doing quite a bit of DEI work now as well, right? Or DIE work, sorry. Diversity.
It depends on what it's diversity and inclusion, diversity, equity and inclusion, diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. So, but it's all in that social justice arena. Yeah. So I do that work. That's work as an African American woman. That's work that I have always done. Whether it was official or not, which is what that mentor helped me figure out, to like get a certificate. So at least you can see it when you, like she said, you need to professionalize it. And so that was when I got a certificate so that you can see the work that I've been doing the whole time. And then I'm also on a board that's called Southern California People of Color in Independent Schools. And so we do a lot of that work and bring in speakers and just educating people. So so I've been doing that. I've been on that board, I think, for 7 years or something like that now.
Oh, that must be really interesting. There's been so many, I mean, especially right now, it seems like there's a little bit of a backlash against some of these programs. I don't know if that's showing up in the schools, but
it's one of those things where the work is never done, and
Right.
there's always something new and always something, but there are always people who are marginalized
Yeah.
and people who need help. And so whatever I can do in my space to help, I'm always, but it's work that's never done, and there's always something. There's always
Right.
been something. uh, People want to hide what's happening in our country, how our country started, all of that kind of stuff. It's all true, no matter what people say. That's why there's just different. What's the narrative now? But the bottom line that continues is that there's always work to be done and to help people. And so when there's something that I can do, when there's someone that I can help through my coaching, when
Mhm.
there's someone who, when students in school who just need someone to talk to and need help navigating, younger people, what did you do in situations like that?
Yeah.
And so anyone that I can help, I'm always that person.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I resonate so much with that, of course. So
Right.
yeah, so it's wonderful to see that you've been able to contribute in the way that you have all this time and just keep morphing.
Yes, exactly. And so now, I mentioned, pandemic, I started doing contract work, and then
Yeah.
I started doing, so I continued to build my personal business.
Yeah.
And then, but I do love the contract work that I'm doing as well. And I think it's important to talk about kind of like shifts in your market, because initially, so when I started, I wanted to work with kids. I thought teens and young adults, that's my market. Yes, that's who I want to coach. And then I realized that in order to coach teens and young adults, your real market is parents, because
Yep.
parents pay and sign up for coaching.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, oh, but parents need help too. So now I'm going to coach parents. That's my market.
Yeah.
And then I recognize that parents, parents don't put themselves first. Parents put their kids first. And I had to do some market research on this, because I was like, these are cool things. Why aren't they signing up? And so I did some research and learned that parents are going to pay for all these different programs for their children. And if you want to coach parents, you need to think about programs that someone else pays for, like the school pays you for coaching parents, and it's parent education or something like that. But just getting parents to sign up, it's that self-care piece that people neglect. But they don't sign up. Parents do things for their kids as opposed to doing it for themselves. And then through my contract work, I never thought I would be interested in being an executive coach. And I'm sure you've heard me a couple of times in this: never thought, I never thought, I never thought. So never say never.
Yeah, right.
But I didn't think I wanted to be an executive coach, because I have some feelings about corporate America sometimes. But what I recognize is, if I can help that if I can help that manager understand who they are, and give them better skills for their teams, and help them with feedback, and like what I'm doing is helping people with self-awareness, helping make that corporate environment a better place, by helping some of those leaders. And because then they can be maybe nicer and have a better understanding of the people they're leading. and help them be better leaders. So, and so I work with people at all different levels. So, which is very cool because it helps me see different perspectives, and it helps me say to a client, okay, so this person is used to be your coworker, but now they're your leader, and now they're your manager. And now what happens with that relationship? And then helping the person who's the manager see it from this person's perspective, helping the person who's, that like just helping people see things from another person's perspective, which is not the normal thing that people do. They just see what's happening in their world. But so that's one thing that I really, really love. I do really love, I used to love my admissions career and the lives that you change and the opportunities that you are really a part of providing opportunities for other people. And when I coach people so many times after, you can hear my smile in my voice, can't you? Sure. But I mean, I said there are so many times when you help people just see something, you see the lights come on. And I know it's like you're done. It's like, okay, I truly love what I do.
Yeah. I mean, that, when just to put this in the context of what this podcast is about, right?
Yes.
B+ best life. The only way you got here was to go through all of those experiences.
Exactly.
Right? And to be able to bring what you know from all of the different paths you've walked, not knowing where you would show up in, not knowing you would have ended up being the director of admissions for all of those years and growing that organization, like all of these experiences,
all of those conversations with parents, all of the experiences, the admission directors are like gods because they let people into all of these schools. And so they are the gatekeepers. So working with them and leading that group, that's something. And being in a boardroom and the experience, the experiences you get from all the people in those rooms, and then like in coaching where that helps is like, okay, so everyone's a real person. They're a real person. Just because they may have this job or this position doesn't mean they're not human, and that, and helping people recognize. And so, so yes, all of those experiences over the years got me to where I am right now. Yeah. And I think it's important to see yourself and not discount those experiences and understand that I can make a change. I can do that. I'm not too old to do anything. Right. And if like when you're in your 60s and feeling like, oh, well, maybe I'm too old to get this next position, I shouldn't apply because they're just going to hire the younger person. It's just like, think about what you bring to the table and all those experiences you have, and then take a look at Washington, D.C. And come on. So 60 is nothing. 60 is young in that environment. If they can.
That is right. So true. Yes.
Right. And so when you start feeling like you're too old when you're in your 60s, you have many, many, many years left, clearly. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's, there's a kind of taking a step. Well, not kind of, it's all about taking a step this is certainly something I do, and I'm sure you do with your clients, to help them see themselves. And, routinely when clients start to do that, they're able to go, oh, right. Yeah, I did accomplish this, and I have done that. And oh, that is how I did that. But there is this process of developing kind of a meta awareness, to to sort of take a step out of the weeds, to be able to see yourself in a new context. And
it's like, make a list.
Yes.
Make a list of all of your accomplishments and all of your skills.
Yeah.
And then you read it and you're like, oh, wow, look at that. That's me. And like, no matter what your jobs have been, we didn't get to this point without having experience, all kinds of experiences, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm so glad I had you on today.
This was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've had many, many, many conversations over the years, right?
We have, and it's so inspiring to see where you are now. And I do want to call out that you left a job without a job.
I did.
Right?
I did, because
people say not to do that. I mean, you know, we have to recognize you did have the security of having somebody also contributing to your household.
Right.
So you had that support to do that. But
when it's time to leave a job, sometimes you have to leave a job without another job, especially when you don't know what that next job is going to be and you need to figure it out.
Yeah.
So that was, So I tried, I was trying while I was still there to figure things out, and there was just no bandwidth to do that. And so I had to take a break. I took some time off that summer that I traveled, and my husband had assignments. I went with him, and I just really it took a while to just clear my head so that I was able to start thinking. So I just feel like that's necessary. So if you have the ability to do that, that was good. But sometimes you can't, like those jobs that are kind of like toxic jobs. Yeah. Life's too short and it affects your health. And as a breast cancer survivor, right. You really have to think about yourself first, and get self-care is so important, and getting out of those really, really, really stressful situations. Yeah. Really important. Yeah. I call that resuscitation. Sometimes working with clients who are really burnt out, we have to take the time just to resuscitate them to sort of, see the moisture and the nutrients come back in so that they can start to perk up again. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just on your knees. So yeah, you're not good for anyone, because after being resuscitated, you do really well for yourself as well as others, and then you can give to others because you're in a healthy place. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that we could have this conversation and share this. And, obviously we're talking about the coaching world, and not everybody's going to go off and be a coach. But there are lots of places in our marketplace of commerce where experience and passion, interests, can really thrive. So going for what you want is so important. Yeah. And, just talking about using those skills that you have, I've interviewed thousands of people. And so coaching was just a natural kind of next step for me, but it wasn't one that I could see initially. Right. So it was something that people helped me discover. Yeah. That's great. Thank you so much, Darlene. Okay, well, we'll have many more conversations, but they won't all be over the airwaves. Exactly. Thank you so much for having me. My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the 60 Plus Best Life podcast. We hope you learned useful and inspiring information today. We welcome your comments and also your suggestions of topics we need to discuss. If you know of someone you'd like to hear on our podcast, please share. We think of this podcast as a way to grow a robust community of people who are making life better at 60 plus. People who are living their best life. Thanks again for listening to, subscribing, and sharing the 60 Plus Best Life podcast.